All right, folks, this is Mr. Gary Yerby. As you can see, I'm a bit of a fan of his work. Three of his many fine creations here. He's a fine builder out of Tennessee. Welcome, Mr. Yerby. Thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, glad to be here.
Awesome. For the sake of people who might come across your work on Reverb or on your Facebook page, Handcrafted Country, I just wanted to get a little sense of how long you've been building guitars and how you got started.
Building since 2017. I've been woodworking for about 50 years, off and on, as a hobby and as a business. And I've been in the glass business also. And I sold my glass business in 2016 and retired. And when I got my shop cleaned out, I got all my woodworking equipment back out and set my shop back up. Built around for a few months, just building little furniture and stuff. And then I had to have shoulder surgery. So I was out for a couple of months. And while I was sitting around doing nothing, I got to think about what I wanted to do. And I decided I wanted to build guitars. I've been playing guitars since I was 13 years old, I guess. And I always wanted to try to do something like that. So that's what got me started.
That's awesome. And what kind of styles did you play? Were you in bands? Did you record? Go play live?
Yeah, I just played in a couple of local bands when I was in high school and got out of high school, got married and had to get a real job. But I played back then. I had a Gretsch Corvette. Wish I still had that thing. It got lost in a move years ago. I also had one of the first Gretsch solid state amps that was built in the 60s. It stood about 4 feet tall, had all the bells and whistles back in it. It was like $450, which, it was a lot of money back in the 60s. Ended up selling that thing in the 70s when I needed money to fix my boat.
It's always something. It's always something. Well, about how big did your collection get at any one point, guitars or amps or both?
I only had a couple of guitars. I started out with a silver tone that had the amplifier built in the case. I went to the Gretsch, and once I got married and started working, I just pretty much gave up playing. I just fiddled every once in a while, but I didn't play much. I went years without picking up guitar. That's one reason my demo videos are not very good, because I don't remember how to play anything. I can still make the notes, but all the music is gone out of my head.
Give it time. Give it time. We're still trying to pick it up too. It's a perishable skill. I think David Lee Roth would say a lot of times. Who are some of your great guitar heroes?
I like a lot of the old Southern bands, Leonard Skinner, I can't remember all of them. There's a lot of the guys from the 60s, the big rock bands from the 60s, early 70s. Dwayne Eddy, you remember him?
Oh, for sure.
I learned to play listening to his records. That's how old I am.
King of Twang, Mr. Eddy. Yeah. Are you a Tennessee native?
No, I'm originally from Alabama. I grew up in Tuscaloosa, about 5 miles from the university. That's why I got all the Alabama stuff on the wall. Moved to Texas in '81 and working for a company out there doing high-rise glass, installing glass in high-rise buildings. They sent me to Mississippi to do a couple jobs over there, and then the work slowed down and I got out of it and ended up getting back into woodworking and started doing craft shows, and ended up here in Tennessee. That's where I met my wife. She was a promoter of the craft shows I was doing, and we got together and got married and ended up here.
Did you get a sense as you moved around of the particular flavor for the music scenes in those areas, or were you just kind of not as much into music as you were working on your work?
I really wasn't that much interested in it at the time. I still listen, but mostly to the oldie stations. You like what you grew up with, and that's still what I listen to, is the oldie stations.
Fast forward, you're kind of reconnecting here with your beloved instrument, and I'm just kind of curious. Your shapes are really intriguing. You do some, as you can see here, mini Telecaster, and a very interesting double cut. One of your many acoustic electrics here. And this is some of your more modest work, I would say, or conservative, given some of the real intricate woodwork. I'm just wondering what inspires your designs.
Well, I just wanted to do something different. Everybody builds the same old thing, Kellys and you know, LPs and stuff, and they paint them. I do very little painting. I very seldom paint a guitar unless it's custom order or just I get the urge to paint something. I like the natural wood look. I like mixing the woods, you know, for the color. If you notice, I very seldom put a pick guard on guitar because I don't want to cover the wood up. And I just like coming up with my own designs, basically building my own thing. Try to be a little different.
How long does it take you to do designs? And are there any particular designs you kind of like to do going forward here?
I got a couple of designs that I built a lot of. It's double horns. Basically, most everything I do is semi-hollow body because I like the sound of a semi-hollow body better than a solid body, and it's a little lighter too. And it varies on the guitar how long it takes me. I can build it. If I work on it every day, I can build a guitar in a week. Or if I work on it every day, I can build 2 guitars in a week. If I can build 2 as quick as I can build 1 because there's so much downtime waiting on stuff to dry. So I usually try to build at least 2 or 3 at a time, keep me busy.
And where do you source your materials, your woods? In terms of pickups, I think at sometimes you use Guitar Fetish.
Yeah, I use GFS sometimes. I've used Seymour Duncan's and some other brands, and I've used some cheap pickups. I mean, I've used some $20 pickups that sounded just good as $100 pickups. I don't know, you know, everybody's stuck on brand names nowadays, and it kills me. People waste a lot of money on $5 brand names when they get the same sound for half the money. My wood, there's a local hardwood supplier in Nashville that I get. They carry all kind of exotic woods, and I get my wood from there. The maple and mahogany and a few other strands of wood that I buy occasionally, mostly just hard maple and mahogany.
In terms of doing these multiple builds, have you kind of changed up materials intentionally, or do you based on supply or whim, or do you just kind of take what's available and say, I'll work with that?
A little of all. A lot of times finance has the, you know, how much money I've got in my account to buy parts with has a lot to do with it because I keep my guitar building separate from everything else. You know, whatever I make off the guitar, that's what I spend on future guitars, buying and building parts. So the wood stays the same. I buy wood from the same because it's consistent. I've had no problems out of it. And the parts, I just, whatever the whim hits me, you know.
About how many guitars have you built as of today?
92.
That's exact. That's awesome. That's awesome. Do you have a particular goal in mind, or do you keep any for yourself?
I'm shooting for 100 this summer. I hope to build my 100th guitar this summer. I've built 92 and I've sold 88. I've got 4. Yeah, I got 4 hanging up in the living room now for sale.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, they are on Reverb right now, folks, and quite reasonable prices, I must say. I was going to say, do you ever keep any for yourself to play?
Not yet. I keep saying I'm going to build myself a guitar, but no, I just hard to do when I want to sell them.
How and you do custom work. You make that clear. I just wonder how many custom builds you've had orders for.
Probably about half of what I built's been custom. I do a lot of custom work. Back when last year when the virus hit and everybody got locked down, they had nothing to do but get on the computer and buy stuff. I had to run there a couple of months. I think I built 8 custom basses in a couple of months. They just all hit at one time. But they kind of come and go. I'll have spurts while I hit 3 or 4 custom orders at a time, and I won't hear nothing for a couple of months, and all of a sudden I get a couple more. This is kind of slow period right now. At the first of summer, everybody's too busy getting outside. It kind of slows down in the summer.
For sure, for sure. How where do you sell? Like, what's the farthest place you've ever sold to through Reverb or your Facebook page?
I sent a bass to Sweden a couple of years ago. Other than that, I sold all over the United States, as far as way as the state of Washington, Oregon, California.
And do you get reports back from people, how it's performing either in gigging situations, recording situations, things like that? Any feedback?
Yeah, I get a lot of feedback on my Facebook page. You'll see some people giving me feedback on it. Reverb, everybody gives me feedback. Just about everybody that buys there gives me feedback. I get some on eBay, not as much on eBay. People not as big about giving feedback on eBay, but I get a lot of feedback, people. So far, it's all been positive.
So how did you learn, get your talent for woodworking? I mean, what did you start on, and how did you kind of, what are some tips for building your skill set as a luthier?
I started out just building, making furniture, little small odds and ends, for myself mainly. And then my dad was a bookkeeper, and he was keeping books for a small table manufacturing company in my hometown. And the guy passed away that owned it, so we bought the table company, manufacturing company, from his widow, and we ran that for a few years to making oak tables and wholesaling them to distributors. We did that for a few years till it kind of went downhill and gave it up, and that's when I moved to Texas. But I've been woodworking off and on. I got in the craft show business back in the late 80s, started building crafts and small furniture and doing craft shows, traveling all over the Southeast, doing craft shows and shopping malls. I did that for several years till that finally played out, and I had to get a real job again. And then I finally got back into the glass business, opened my own shop in 2005 and ran it till 2016. I sold it in 2016 and retired. And then, like I said, got my woodworking shop set back up, started doing that. But I just self-taught. Everything I've ever done has been self-taught. I mean, the first guitar I built, I think it took me about 3 months before I finally got it made, from all the errors and learning and all that, and drilling a couple of holes in my hands and having to go to the emergency room. once I got it all down, it just kind of moved on from there, and I still refine my way I build. Occasionally, I still come up with a better way to do something. And I went to through the neck design probably 3 years or so ago, not long after I started building. I decided to go through the neck, and that was a process of learning how to rebuild, because like it's not, you don't build the same way as you do with a bolt on. It's a totally different way of building, and I had to come up with different ways to do things to make it easier.
What kind of equipment, what are some of like the must-have pieces of equipment in your shop, or some of your favorites?
Well, your basic things you got to have, table saw, radial arm saw, planer. Some of my equipment I built, I have a stroke sander that I built. It has a 186-inch sanding belt on it. Horizontal sander I built. It has a 86-inch belt, 120-inch belt on it, I think. I had a store-bought horizontal sander, but it only sanded 24 inches surface, and I needed something that would sand up 48-inch surface so I could sand the side, my necks, all at one time instead of in pieces. So I built that big horizontal sander so I could sand my neck up to a 48-inch long neck at one time. And I've got a pneumatic press that I built. I do a lot of my gluing with instead of using clamps. 4 or 5 years ago, I found some huge pneumatic cylinders at a yard sale for $5, and I bought them. I figured, I'll use them for something one of these days. And so after I started building, I got those out and thought, well, I'll build them a pneumatic press, and I did. I used the press to glue my body wings together with. I use it to glue my fretboards on my necks, and also I've got a jig I put in it. I use it to press my frets in with. So I press my frets in with a pneumatic press. They all press in more evenly that way.
What are some of your preferences for gear in terms of fret wire, inlay material, potentiometers, any of that good stuff, jacks? I know you use a lot of locking tuners.
Yeah, I use mainly locking tuners. It's just they stay in tune much better with locking tuners. The jacks, I have used some CTS jacks. I use a lot of Born jacks, Born brand name. They're not quite as costly, and they seem to work just as good. I use mainly jumbo frets. I like that size. It seems to feel better. And then if you do have to file some down, you don't get so low with them. I've developed a way that I do my frets on my necks that I very seldom have to do any filing on them. Just the kind of way that I put my necks on, I put my fretboards on and press my frets in with my pneumatic press, that they all come out good and even. So I very seldom have to file a fret. It saved me a lot of work. I used to have to do a lot of filing, especially when I was doing bolt-on necks.
What are some of the differences? I mean, you've a little bit, and you do some treatments on the necks as well, I believe, kind of chamfer them out a bit on occasion.
It just depends on what I'm making, what somebody wants, you know. I've got a style of neck that I build mostly the same. I set up a router to do my initial shape rounding of the neck, and then I finish out the round on my stroke sander, which gives it a good rounding, smooth surface and keeps it even all the way.
Do you do much with vibratos, Bigsby type tail pieces, anything like that?
Yeah, I occasionally put on some, especially custom orders. A lot of times people order them custom with one of Bigsby or a knockoff or whatever.
What have been 2 or 3 of your absolute favorite builds that you're kind of sorry to let see go?
Oh, I don't know. There's been so many of them. I just some of my hollow body. And I did build here a while back. I built a hollow body fretless bass for a guy. There's a picture of it on my Facebook page, and it was really a challenge building it because he wanted the body 4.5 to 5 inches thick, and building a fretless bass. He wanted fret lines and dots on the sides on the fretboard, and doing all that, getting all that built was, it was a pretty good challenge, but it turned out pretty good.
And when you are asked to paint the bodies, or this actually started as a blue outside, cream inside, you change it to a matte black, and then you were very kind enough to do the blueburst when you spotted a blemish on it. I just wonder about your paint technique and your, kind of sealing it in, or do you keep it a little more open for breathability?
I try to use lacquer paint so I can cover it with clear lacquer finish to protect the paint. I don't have the patience to paint, why I don't do a lot of painting. It takes a lot of patience to paint, and I just don't have it. I end up messing up more than I paint when I try to paint. The lacquer, it dries quick. It's easy to work with. I usually just put 2 or 3 coats of sand and sealer on them, and 3 or 4 coats of lacquer. I don't like to get a real heavy finish on it because the thicker the finish, the more it's going to deaden the wood down where you're not going to get such a good sound out of it.
As I mentioned earlier, some of your guitars are even more intricate than this. Is there one particular guitar where you used, you remember how many pieces of wood you laid in to create that stratified look?
I built a couple of guitars that I guess you'd call it parquet. It was just all squares like a checkerboard, and all those squares was individually squares glued together.
Wow. I think I remember seeing that one. That's amazing. I did see that one. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that one. How long did that one take? That had to be longer than your average.
Well, it took several gluings because the checkerboards, you have to glue up strips, and then you cut your strips off crossways. Then you got to, offset them and glue them up again. And then after you glue them up again, you got to surface it again, and then block it out to glue to the frame, to the body frame. So it takes 3 or 4 gluings to make a checkerboard. I built one and sold, and I had a guy order custom ordered one. I haven't built one since.
So it's certainly an amazing result. What is your kind of quality control process? Speaking about multiple gluings, anything from your fret process you talked about. But I just wonder, what is your kind of final quality check process before you'll let something out of your shop?
Well, I go over the best I can. I tell people that I couldn't have built, I wouldn't have been able to build guitars years ago because I wouldn't have had the patience for it. Takes a lot of patience to build guitars. And sometimes I might work on a spot no bigger than the end of my finger for an hour or two. It's just a lot of fine sanding and getting things cleaned up. And none of them's perfect. I can find a blemish or a flaw in every guitar I build because after you get finished, there's always something. It's hard to build when it's exactly perfect by hand. But most things are not really noticeable. I can see it, and most people won't never see it.
Mhm.
But it's just a lot of work to build, and a lot of work, and a lot of sanding, a lot of hand sanding. I do a lot of hand sanding. I do a lot of sanding with the orbital sander, and a lot of sanding on my stroke sander with them too.
What are some tips you've learned along the way, particularly, the difference between the through body neck, the bolt on neck, some of the cutaways that you've done, horn lengths, things like that. What are some maybe shapes that are easier to do, harder to do, things that you will now avoid, or things that you discovered how to do and refine your process?
Well, the main thing on the through the necks is two things. I build my neck complete. It is completely finished before I glue the body wings on, because it's hard to work on that neck once you glue the body wings on as far as sanding and shaping. So it's completely finished, has a fretboard on it, the frets are in it, the headstock is finished. All I have to do, and my body wings, I completely finish them before I glue them on. I build them, shape them, cut out my F holes, whatever, and drill the control holes, sand it down, finish sand it and everything before I glue them on. So after I glue my body wings onto my neck, all I have to do is just finish sand, just sand out my glue joints and then do some finish sanding. But there's still a lot of finish sanding to do even after that, because you always find a spot here and there.
Mhm. Do you have any special thoughts about your 100th guitar? Any design you might try for that one?
No, it may be the one I keep. I don't know what design it'll be yet, but it may be the one I keep. I keep trying to come up with new designs. It's hard to come up with something different that people will still buy. But everybody wants a Tele, and I get tired of building Teles.
Well, the tiny one is really it's really great, and it's not so. It's just really a slightly smaller than some of my SGs over there. And now you've got an oversized one, I think, for
Yeah,
sale, or you've had recently. Yeah, what is it about the Tele style? And have you ever done a solid body version?
yeah. I've built a couple solid bodies and custom orders. Uh, I just, from what I build, I just always like semi-hollow bodies or hollow bodies. The solid bodies are just heavier, and I just don't think they have the good sound like a hollow semi-hollow body does. But yeah, that Tele is not that smaller Tele. It's probably not a half, 3/4 inch smaller all the way around than a regular Tele, but it seems a lot more once you get it built. Just like that big Tele I got hanging up in there now, it's not but less than an inch all the way around, bigger than regular Tele, but it looks a lot bigger.
You achieve some really amazing visual effects, I must say. It's just gorgeous to look at. Just some last thoughts about, to you, what are some of the greatest guitar songs that you always go back to?
One of my favorites, Sweet Home Alabama. Of course, I can't imagine why, since that's where I'm from. There's a lot of old stuff. My memory's not as good as it used to be. I'm 71, so I can remember what I did when I was 10 years old, but I can't remember what I did yesterday. So it's hard. I have to think about stuff for a while sometimes.
Sure.
I tell people, I spend half my time in my shop hunting for stuff that I've laid down. I can't remember where I laid it.
In terms of, you've got pretty steady business, it's picking up again. You're closing in on 100 guitars. What is kind of the state of guitar? I mean, we talk about, oh, it's not as popular, it's this, it's that, it's not this. Where do you think the guitar stands in terms of its functional, its appeal, its importance, all that good stuff?
Man, there's thousands of guitars for sale every day all over the country, and people still buy them. I don't think they'll ever go away because you can't substitute a live performance with guitar with something computer generated. It's just not the same thing.
For any folks who'd like to reach out to you, as we mentioned, you're on Reverb and you're on Facebook. Are there any other places that you are selling or plan to sell? And when people get in touch with you with a custom order, what should they have in mind so that you can help them realize their vision?
I sell on Reverb, eBay, Bonanza, Facebook Marketplace, and of course my Facebook page, facebook.com/handcrafted country. And people call me, email me, whatever. I let people that want custom orders, I tell them just, design what you want, tell me what you want. I've had them draw a picture and send it to me of the body shape they want, and I'll build it from that. If it's feasible to build, I'll build whatever they want.
Excellent, excellent, sir. Well, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure talking with you, and I can't wait to see what you do for that 100th guitar, whether you keep it or give it out to us and give us a shot at it. Final thoughts on your craft, anything to do with your work?
Well, I appreciate you having me on here. The 100th guitar, I don't know if I keep it. I may sell it. I may actually make some money on one for a change. Since it's my 100th guitar, I'll charge more for it.
There you go.
I don't make a whole lot off these things. People think you do, but I don't. If I figured out about an hour, I might be making $2 an hour on them. And I just do it because I love to do it, and make me a little extra spending money. But I'm gonna do it as long as I can. Hopefully, I can get another 10 years out of it. Maybe get maybe up to 300 or 400 guitars. But 100th one, I haven't decided yet. That may be the one I keep, or I may throw it out there for a little higher price because it's the 100th one.
Excellent, excellent. Well, we can't wait to see it, sir. Thank you so much for your time and for your work. It's wonderful. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.